Can the weak geniuses defeat the strong idiots? We're going to give a human civilization the traits of intelligence and physical weakness, and pit them against a civilization of orcs who will be strong, but dumb. Let's see if brains are enough to overcome brute strength. For this experiment, we're working with a square map, split exactly down the middle, with a large lake in the center. The lake serves both as a fishing resource and a way to cool off during the scorching heat. The map contains the same amount of resources on each side, with the goal of keeping everything as balanced as possible. First, we'll place a group of humans on the left side of the map. They'll be given the traits of being weak but smart. On the right side, we'll place a group of orcs, who will be defined as strong but dumb. Once that's done, we hit play and let them explore their surroundings. The first thing the strong idiots do is group up, like 5 of them, to kill a tiny kitten that happened to be wandering nearby. After that, they kind of just stood around unsure of what to do next, until one finally took the lead and started building a campfire. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, things were looking way more organized. Everyone seemed to have a specific role. While some gathered resources, others focused on building the campfire and then what looked like their first tent. Back with the strong idiots, a few individuals seemed to enjoy showing off their strength by killing rhinos with their bare hands. Still, their village was coming along reasonably well. They already had a fire going, 2 tents, and were about to build their 3rd little house. Now's a good time to rename both kingdoms and assign them colors that fit their personalities. The weak geniuses will get the color white, which I think makes sense to represent intelligence. As for the strong idiots, we'll also give them a unique color that fits their most defining trait. After about a decade, the weak geniuses were doing pretty well. They had several upgraded houses, had built their first windmill, and were developing roads connecting all their buildings. On the strong idiots side, even though they also had a few upgraded houses built in a rougher, more primitive style, they hadn't built any roads and didn't really show any kind of clear organizational structure in their kingdom. They didn't have windmills either, although their population was slightly larger than that of the weak geniuses. When it comes to kings, the smart side has Sakase, who carries a wooden sword. Sure, it may seem like a very basic weapon, but hey, it's still better than the plain wooden stick used by the king of the strong idiots. And so we reach year 50. At this point, the strong idiots had gained an even bigger lead in terms of population, not just in overall citizens, but also in the number of soldiers, almost doubling the count of the smart ones. However, when it comes to development, they had just begun working on their first windmill. On top of that, much of their energy was being spent defending their territory from wild animals roaming the area. It's worth pointing out that they still hadn't built any roads connecting their buildings. You can also see that they've constructed a dock, although it doesn't look like they've developed any fishing or trading boats yet. On the other hand, the situation on the smart side was way more advanced. They had built several windmills, new settlements complete with their own palaces, and of course, nearly all of their buildings were connected by well-defined roads. Plus, the animals in that area didn't seem nearly as aggressive as the ones on the right side of the map, which gave them more freedom to focus on technological and cultural development. They even built a mine to extract stone, which they later used to reinforce the foundations of their houses. In some cases, like in the capital, they used that stone to cover entire buildings, which gave them a significantly higher level of durability. And just now, I happened to witness them reaching the coastline, which suggests they'll soon be building their first dock. That could allow them to compete with the strong idiots in the maritime domain, since the latter had already completed their first fishing boat. Funny enough, just when I was about to leave, I saw that the weak geniuses had managed to surpass the strong idiots in overall population. Let's see if that trend continues in the future, or if the strong idiots manage to take back the lead. As for the kings, King Sakase is still alive at the age of 73, and now he's equipped with a stone sword. Meanwhile, the king of the strong idiots is still wielding the same wooden stick, although he's now wearing almost a full set of leather armor. Not surprising really, considering they're constantly dealing with wild animals like buffaloes that wander near the borders looking for a fight. In fact, some people might say it's unfair that the savannah dwellers have to deal with constant threats from wild animals, while peace reigns over in the plains. But honestly, I think it actually balances things out. Since strength is the defining trait of the right side, having to face constant challenges only sharpens that trait even more. On the flip side, the calm environment of the plains allows the weak geniuses to focus on intellectual tasks, which boosts the development of more advanced technologies. And just like that, we reach year 200. By this point, the weak geniuses had almost doubled the population of the strong idiots, both in general population and military size. They had also taken over all the available territory, while the strong idiots still had patches of land left unclaimed. In terms of progress, the weak geniuses showed clear evolution in their structures. Several palaces had been upgraded. They had built training barracks to improve their soldiers, which partially explains the military growth, and their mines were more advanced, now extracting more valuable metals that were later used to equip the army. On top of that, they had developed a port with multiple trade ships constantly coming and going, along with several fishing boats that kept their food supply steady. They'd even built warships, although for now they remained inactive since no wars were currently happening, and if that weren't enough, they were already upgrading their buildings even further, entering what looked like the modern era, where we can expect a significant population boom thanks to the increased housing capacity of these new structures. The strong idiots hadn't made much progress. Even their windmills didn't seem to be working efficiently, and while they had built several mines, none of them were of the modern kind. Their army did show a certain level of organization, with some soldiers equipped with iron and steel weapons, but they hadn't built any training barracks, which could seriously hurt their capabilities in case of war. That said, considering the constant fights they had with wild animals, it's possible they learned to fight in a more practical way, without the need for formal training. They had also built 2 ports, although no trade ships were in sight, which leaves room for improvement in the future. On another note, it's important to mention that the traits we assign to both civilizations remain intact and are passed down from generation to generation, so there's no risk of these traits disappearing over time. As for the kings, the original ones are obviously no longer alive, and now their heirs have taken the throne. In the kingdom of the weak geniuses, King Mim now rules. He's equipped with a mix of iron and steel armor, and what looks like a wooden spear. Over in the land of the strong idiots, King Didi is in charge, fully armored and wielding an iron axe. And finally, we reach year 1000. By this time, the weak geniuses had managed to keep their lead in overall population compared to the strong idiots, although the latter now had the upper hand when it came to military numbers. However, in terms of technological progress, the weak geniuses clearly stood out. They had practically upgraded all of their buildings to the maximum level. As for the strong idiots, while they had managed to upgrade several houses, many of their buildings still looked pretty primitive, borderline prehistoric to be honest. Anyway, the time had come to tear down the wall that separated both kingdoms and begin the ultimate showdown. Once the wall was destroyed, we hit play, and right away we see the strong idiots crossing the border and launching a quick assault against the weak geniuses. Of course, the geniuses weren't about to just sit back and watch. They immediately mobilized their troops to the front lines. Soon, more reinforcements arrived from the strong idiots side, and then from the weak geniuses as well. However, the latter couldn't hold off the initial push and were quickly overrun by enemy forces. The war rapidly spread across the entire northern front, turning into a full-scale global conflict. The smart side began losing territory in the north, while the situation in the south became even more critical, since most of their troops were focused on holding the north. This left the southern region wide open, and the strong idiots had little trouble taking it over, even with their army being somewhat disorganized. They advanced bit by bit, conquering land without causing major destruction, which later allowed them to take full advantage of the infrastructure and technology they themselves hadn't been able to develop. Little by little, they kept pushing through the southern lands, wiping out nearly all of the weak geniuses' soldiers. And even though it was clear the strong idiots lacked any real strategy, their raw power was enough to completely crush the weak geniuses. And so, they took over the entire world. No threats remained that could stand up to the overwhelming physical power of the strong idiots.